I am Marco Demorelis, co-founder and general partner of Ansa. The thesis behind Ansa was building and supporting founders as they scale at a very specific stage. Typically, that's post early stage venture, but pre-growth. And for us, one of the things we found most helpful is leveraging all of the great C-level and VP level leaders who we previously worked with in a really tactical way to help our companies cross that chasm over time. And that's the core of what Growing Pains is. It's leveraging these insights as a community, sharing them openly. Today, we're joined with Shilpa Patel. She is the Chief Business and Legal Officer and a founding team member of Kindbody, a company that is very near and dear to my heart. They are a women's health and fertility care business that's really focused on making family planning and building more inclusive and affordable, which historically it's not been.
Thank you, and hopefully I'll be able to provide some insight to the audience.
What is one of the biggest misconceptions you faced in building and scaling this type of business in the healthcare space?
So I think, when we launched the company in the summer of 2018, probably the biggest misconception in launching the company and also in fundraising was, is there a demand? And, we met with, particularly in the fundraising environment, I don't know how many times we kind of heard the feedback, well, do young women really want to freeze their eggs? Are they really looking to do that? Or do that many people have an infertility issue? And the 1 in 6 couples has a fertility issue in the United States, which is actually more than the number of people who have a diabetes issue. So I think that that was certainly a misconception that we faced, that being the demand. And then secondly, the second misconception was, can you build a fertility company and provide fertility care, fertility and family building care as a brand new clinic built on a brand? We really focused on building our brand and building a brand that resonates, and that's very different in healthcare. When in the fertility space specifically, a lot of the clinics were kind of built around these celebrity physicians who kind of got into the fertility space early on and built a reputation, and then built their clinics based off of those reputations. And we believed we could, and we have.
It hits on a chicken and egg problem, right? Investors want you to prove the demand. In the absence of doing that, how did you show signs that there was real intent and captive demand and find your true believers, both on the brand side and then, on the capital raising side?
So I'll start on the brand side. The first, as you know, we launched the company with a kind of a marketing event. We provided complimentary blood work. It's a fertility AMH test, a test for ovarian reserve. We had a kind of mobile van / food truck that had been repurposed into a mobile clinic. And we launched the company August 1st, 2018. We had an event August 3rd of 2018, right outside of Madison Square Park in New York City, where we offered complimentary tests from a company, Kindbody, that nobody had ever heard of. We advertised on Instagram those 2 days prior. And within the first hour, we had a 2-hour wait of young women looking to do the blood work, to do an AMH test on a van from a company they'd never heard of. And truthfully, I had some doubts. I'm a little bit older, and I kind of thought, how many people are really going to go get their blood drawn on, a really very nice, very obviously hygienic and clean mobile clinic, but from a company they'd never heard of. And that really, I think, for me, solidified product market fit, that there's a demand, there's a need, and that many women, particularly obviously in very urban metropolitan areas, already knew what an AMH test was. That was also kind of a shock to me, that they knew what it was, and that they had wanted to get one, and they didn't know if they needed to go to their OBGYN clinic or where to go to get that test. On the fundraising side, it was really getting the investors who understood the product, and a lot of the times it was speaking to the female investors at many of the VC firms that we were working that invested in Kindbody, finding that lead partner who understood the demand, understood the journey itself. This crosses from fertility care to all aspects of healthcare, that the patient experience or the member experience is poor, and there's so much opportunity to provide a better experience. There's opportunity to bring down costs, and there's opportunity to make the services more accessible. And so finding those partners who already understood the partners like yourself
Yeah.
who understood who understood the industry and the need. That was what really kind of drove us in the beginning.
Yeah, the scrappiness of the van I'll never forget. I can't tell you how many companies reach out to us asking how to do a van. And I think, that speaks to who you guys are as people, but the creativity and grit that you need to build this type of business, it's not easy. And another part that is tricky that I'm sure many would benefit from insights around is around the duality of the model. Both, like you said, starting by testing that intent on Instagram and really building a consumer facing business and evolving to be both B2B and B2C. That's hard enough. You also then built a digital product, and there's a technology core part of the business as well as a physical clinic. And so maybe if we break that up into two questions, how do you do both B2B and B2C successfully?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, when we launched the company, our intent was always to enter the B2B space, but on day one, that was going to be challenging. We were building our first clinic. We didn't even have a clinic open yet. We were only located in one market. And so starting on with the D2C base was really the low hanging, I mean, I don't like to call it low hanging fruit, but it was the easiest entry into the market. And so at the time, we started providing services to local markets. So we started in New York, we moved to San Francisco, we moved to LA. We opened clinics, in New York, LA, and San Francisco, and really serving the local communities. And then also similarly, in addition to, so we have patients who pay cash for the services in those same markets. We applied or obtained, I should say, contracts with the major commercial payers, and so we were in network with many people who had insurance coverage, and those were the two kind of entry points to getting patients into our clinics. That followed by, after we had built out at some breadth of a network across the country, both our own clinics as well as a network of partner clinics across the country, we knew that we would then be able to serve employers. Our first employer customers were typically concentrated in the markets in which we operated our own clinics. And since then, over the past 4 years, we just opened our 32nd clinic in Rogers, Arkansas yesterday. In order to actually service and to get to where we are today, we needed to build out that breadth of accessibility, really.
I want to come back to the payer relationships because I think it's something that, frankly, most consumer facing startups struggle to obtain and scale. I think the other element of how do you manage physical infrastructure while being a technology facing business? I don't know if there's, one reflection or two. I'm sure it's a challenge that you have to deal with every day, but how do you think about managing the footprint and designing your org and creating accountability so that you can be successful in all these markets?
It's challenging. Growth versus profitability is one part of it, and then growth versus the ability to service our clients the way that we want to and provide them kind of a superior service, and so not losing sight of that. So we have, I think this is part of your question, but we picked markets. The markets in which we've expanded to are primarily driven by where we know we have a demographic of a patient base. So, people within the reproductive age. Also, markets in which we either have employer customers, or we know that there's a strong employer base. So that's what's dictated which markets we've moved into. But the growth and the kind of speed to opening these brick and mortar clinics has also been driven by how much we can handle internally, and also driven by, we've always been focused on profitability. So making sure that we're still tracking towards our profitability timeframe and cash flow positive timeframe.
That's always been impressive of you guys. I think doubling back a bit to navigating partnerships, particularly with established institutions perceived to be risk averse, whether that's old school payers, plans, systems, or institutions like a Walmart that don't need to partner with you in a way, right? But choose to. What's been core to developing trust with those types of firms and also getting it over the line?
It's staying true to our mission, which is being a service-based organization and serving, so on the employer customer side, and the Walmart is a great example. they selected Kindbody as their COE, their center of excellence for fertility care. They're flying all of their employee, any full-time employee has a fertility benefit through Kindbody and can obtain care at a Kindbody clinic. And the way in which I think we've been able to get to this point and having a company like Walmart select Kindbody is by being really true to that service-based mission, to providing excellent care, to providing excellent outcomes, and also to being able to deliver cost savings. And that, in this market, obviously, that's very important. It's important to all large customers, small customers, or employers, I should say, who want to add a fertility benefit but need it to be cost effective. And also transparency and cost. That's also core to our mission. On the payer side, we are in network with the payer as the traditional provider model. We're also in the process of partnering with certain payers, and that's a longer road and a more challenging partnership, primarily because the payers, they just take a long time.
Yeah,
They're not known to move fast.
right.
And they have to see the value. And in the fertility space, it's one of the high cost specialty care services that they provide, or benefits that they provide, but not. I would say that for most payers, they've concentrated primarily on the maternity side, which drives higher costs for them than on
Yeah.
the fertility side.
Yeah. Most of the companies we work with, they're typically between two-ish on the low end of revenue, upwards of 20. Of course, there are exceptions, but that's typically the profile when we invest. And what they are often doing is they're experimenting with pricing. Are there anecdotes that you can share around how you guys have evolved your thinking on PMPM pricing after delivering for certain types of customers on a no names basis, on a no numbers basis?
So we're a little different in that we don't have our fee structure is not primarily based on a PMPM or PEPM. I will say that most employers do not want to pay PMPMs. They want to pay per engaged member, per utilizer, versus
Mhm.
paying across the board. That being said, they pay, what our fee structure is, there is primarily based on paying for the actual services rendered. So that's similar to, a PEPM or per utilizer per month. But that is, we've seen strong traction there because the employer obviously wants to pay, or any customer, not just an employer, wants to pay for what's being used. They don't want to pay for something that's there and not being used. And so that I would say is primary, and then also transparency into cost. They want to know, it's not that the employer doesn't want to pay for services for their employees, or what any kind of, I think, customer doesn't want to pay. It's that they want to know where their money's going, and they want it to be transparent. And so we feel strongly about providing transparent fees to employers, and and as we move into, I think that's probably some of your portfolio companies are looking to move into the payer space. I similarly think payers are looking to they want to partner with different solutions out there. And I think that there's opportunities to develop, if you can figure out how to develop a risk share program that makes sense. I
Yeah,
think more and more payers will want to do that.
that's a great point. So I think to summarize, scrap PMPM and focus on utilization and be transparent with cost.
Yep.
The company has obviously done phenomenally well. You've reached a scale that I think is far beyond what I imagined 4 or 5 years ago, and it's so impressive to think about that journey to $1 billion plus. When you think about what surprised you the most on this first leg of the journey, what comes to mind?
Our growth. I mean, I don't know that 4 years ago when we had that mobile van, a little bit,
Yeah,
almost 4.5 years ago, when we had that mobile van event, that we would have 32 clinics across the country. So that surprised me the most. And then secondly, I really thought that COVID would have a negative impact on employers looking to add a fertility benefit, and we've really seen the opposite. And so that's been very surprising, that more and more employers are looking to add a benefit in both in the beginning of COVID and also now in a recession.
that's great. It's about time.
Yep.
Well, switching gears a bit on the personal, when you think about one piece of advice that you wish someone had given you before you started as a chief business and legal officer, which is a very big role, what comes to mind?
Two things. One is the ability to pivot. You're particularly when you're starting. I mean, we threw spaghetti at the wall and tried different approaches. Our enterprise solution has matured over time, and the first launch of it or first iteration of it was quite different than what it is today. And so, being able to pivot quickly and embrace that change, I think it's hard. This is a part of being working at a startup. You definitely need to know how to embrace change. So being able to pivot quickly is probably my first piece of advice. And then the second piece of advice is in the healthcare space specifically. I think we've seen a lot of companies who have launched, they want to get out there and disrupt the model. And this is putting on my legal hat. There are so many ways to do it, but it is a highly regulated space. And so understanding the kind of framework in which you need in which you need to work, and also what you need to navigate is super important in healthcare.
Totally. And for the types of entrepreneurs we work with, they're typically anywhere from late 20s to late 30s. And a lot happens over that period of time, right? That 10-year period. I'm not sure if you were at Foley or still a practicing lawyer 10 years ago, but I'd be curious for you to think about what was something you never expected to be doing 10 years ago in your role today.
10 years ago, I was still a practicing attorney. I never thought that I
Wow.
would be doing business related work, building a business, sorry, and everything from ops to, um, I've worn many hats. I was the head of HR for a short minute, which I don't recommend. Uh, so that's a hard role in a company. Just I didn't think that I would have the opportunities that I've had to really learn how to build a business. That has been personally very rewarding. And then, secondly, the contributing to people's lives. I mean, speaking of my former law firm, I received a message from somebody who is a junior associate at one of the offices of my former law firm, who had happened upon Kindbody, had previously had really bad experiences at other fertility clinics, and just wrote me a note to tell me that she leaves her fertility treatments with no longer leaves those appointments in tears, but leaves them with hope and a smile. And that drives home what it is that we're doing, and that it's making an impact on people's lives.
Well, that I think is a great place to end it. Let all the entrepreneurs we work with be inspired to have the amount of impact you guys have had on the space. Thank you for joining us, Shilpa, and opening up those insights. And I'll see you at Health.
Yes, see you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.